In my Abandoned Spain series, I've come across some amazing places, especially abandoned, obviously, but this is slightly different. When I say it's abandoned, there are abandoned bits of land, and on some of those bits of land there are property. But anyway, this is called the Palomares incident. Now I'm going to give you a bit of brief history about this, because this is a really serious incident that could have wiped Spain off the map. Anyway, back in January 17th, 1966, on a Sunday morning, up in the sky were two planes, two United States planes. And I'm going to give you a bit more information on that. Now, we're talking 1960s, we're still talking the Cold War, and we're talking about, obviously, our favourite people, the Russians and the US and the rest of Europe. We're in that Cold War situation where we could all nuke each other. Anyway, back in the US, a general decided to think up a brilliant idea. They called it Operation Chrome Dome, and what it meant was to have B-52 bombers. Now these bombers are massive, and have 12 to 24 of these bombers in the sky 24/7 all the time. So as soon as one lot's finished their operation, there'd be another lot up in the sky. And what they used to do is obviously keep those bombers up there, is to keep refueling them, and obviously they would simultaneously bring some in. You get the gist of it. Anyway, this is what happened on that day. Now what it was, they used to fly from the US over to Europe, close onto the Russian border, spin back round, and as they come over the tip of Spain, this is where they would do probably the most dangerous operation, really, is to refuel the aircraft while still in the sky. Anyway, that morning something went wrong. They both collided, huge explosion. Now on each of those B-52 bombers, they carry 4 nuclear bombs. 4. They're not obviously primed to go off, but they are carrying them ready for this, the Cold War situation. Anyway, the 2 planes exploded. Quite a few of the people died, mainly obviously on the refueling plane. They all died, unfortunately, but the guys on the bomber, some of them managed to escape. Anyway, these nuclear bombs all had a safety thing fitted to them, which was parachutes and obviously shock absorbing nose, so if they hit the ground they wouldn't go off. Anyway, unfortunately that didn't happen as well. 2 of the parachutes didn't work, 2 of them exploded, 1 went in the sea. There was a big hoo-ha about trying to find that before the Russians could find it. There's numerous videos out there, guys, about this incident. While watching some of the videos, there's sort of mixed information, so I'm just giving the general. But anyway, the 2 that exploded, it didn't set off obviously the nuke, because I wouldn't be here, no doubt, and half of Spain wouldn't have been there. But what was the most dangerous thing was petroleum 239, whatever that is. Now another thing to remember, if you can remember in your history about Japan when they dropped the Hiroshima bomb back in 1945, over 226,000 people died. Now these these bombs are 73 times more powerful, so you can get the gist of it. So like I said, probably the whole of Spain would have been wiped off the map. Anyway, when these 2 bombs exploded, like I said, they weren't activated, but it did activate the petroleum part of it and the dust, and they reckon the dust did cover the large majority of Spain anyway. So what happened then, obviously once the plane had gone down, obviously the US had to clear up the operation, so the US base at Madrid had to come down to clear up decontamination. Now most of the guys that come down to do the decontamination, they weren't properly in proper suits and nothing like that. What they did do, they did remove 2 inches of topsoil around each because when these bombs went off, they were like huge craters. Thankfully, nobody got killed on the ground, which is amazing, because it did miss a school apparently, and one went onto a hill. Anyway, it removed 2 inches of topsoil into 6,000 barrels and was sent supposedly back to the US for storage. Now, the other thing was, at that time, the US and the Spanish government said, don't panic, you're completely safe. But the mayor at the time did say, don't eat nothing, don't drink nothing. Thankfully, they took his advice. But now, you wouldn't even have thought that the town is developed probably threefold now. There's loads of new development in the area. It's quite close to the sea. And I think they were saying back in 2006 they did a radiation check, and it was still very high. Now, what I'm hearing, some of it, that radiation, where they hadn't even bothered to fence it off, it wasn't until 30 years later that they found high radiation levels. So obviously wildlife, things like that. So apparently everything in that area is supposed to be covered for growing vegetables, and all water sources come from outside and brought in. But looking at, when I was there, I could see some fields, they weren't covered, you know, like cabbages and things like that. Anyway, in this video, I'm just driving around with my friend. Now, there's supposed to be 5 areas in this area. Now, the first bit you're going to see is where we parked near the hill. Now, what it was, one of the bombs did hit that hill, and a large amount of dust landed on that hill. It's got, nothing grows there at all. And my second clip that I'd done, the other bomb that exploded. Now that area is fenced off. What surprised me was the fence was like you would expect anybody that owns a bit of land to put a fence around it. You can see the signs. They don't really say a lot about. There's nothing about radiation. It just says restricted area. Even that, to be honest, is a bit mystifying, because there's not many signs about. And on that second part that I looked at, part of the fence was falling over anyway, so no doubt anybody would be exploring in there. But from what we hear, there's been no cases of radiation deformity or high risk of cancer in that area. But I still think it amazes me. I wonder how many people that have bought property in that area realise that this incident happened that long ago. Because anything sort of like that, contamination, we're talking not hundreds, but maybe thousands of years before all that's eradicated. But anyway, I just thought I'd put this video up. Hopefully you find it interesting.